Not really, but
I think my fondest memory was when it was either the game like I won like by an inch because I managed to get one shot, or when my cousin and I started hitting each other with like the what's it called again? The holes. I don't know. Yeah.
Olivia, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I was just finishing up saying like we had to stop because one of us started bleeding. I can't remember.
Olivia,
I just wanted to ask, how many classes do you left?
I think we end December 11th.
I haven't heard that.
So we have another maybe 2 class meetings left. Maybe
The last week is the week of the 9th. So Friday the 13th would be the last class, whatever it is.
yeah, so just a couple weeks. Well, Terry, you're very kind. Thank you. Thank you. It was good to see you yesterday. Yeah. Well, I just ran into him, I ran over him. Then I stopped and had to. Yeah, we have another few weeks. And then we have a month off.
Do you know when classes start?
I think it's January 22nd, if I'm not mistaken, or 20th, somewhere there. Yeah. So. Hello?
And November 21st through the 1st is holiday observance.
November 21st?
Sorry, 28th.
Oh, yes,
It's a
that's.
Thursday, so the last Thursday of this month is Thanksgiving Day.
Yeah, so we have classes, I think, Monday through Wednesday, and then. Monday through Wednesday, and then Thursday and Friday are off. For those of you who have classes on Thursdays and Fridays, no school. Diggin, what's going on? How are your parents?
They've been out of town for the last month.
Oh, yeah? For fun? Fun? Good for them. Where?
Oh, I have some family in Georgia, so they're just there.
Is that like near France?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'll tell them I said hi. Hello. Hello. The what? The twins? They're not twins. Hello. So, is there something you guys want to talk about before we go home?
Will you imagine? What is that?
Maybe. You know, if you were to hold hands with Matthew there, it would be like holding a 2x4. If on the other hand you were to fall in love with Matthew and then hold hands, it would be a 2x4, like a 2x6. And so, yeah, you can find magic, I mean, when your stomach is full, when you eat food, it's just, when you're starving, it's magic when you eat food. Oh, yeah, talking about raising the dead, healing the sick. We had a friend, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. It's like 50 years ago. She had traveled to England, to America, to France, in hope of some remedy, but none was found. Eventually, someone told her that there was a guy in India, some old man, in some forsaken village, and he had magical powers. And when you're sick and dying and you'd like to continue with your life, anything that can give you hope is valuable. So she gets on a plane and she drives to India. And she finds this man, and there is this huge line. Everybody's just waiting to see him. And it gets to be her turn. He says, "What do you want?" So, "I have breast cancer. I was wondering if, they tell me you have powers." He says, "Okay, lay down." And she does. And then he says to remove her shirt and the bra, and she does. And this is like, a Persian woman, very conservative, very religious, very traditional. Such things are not done, especially in public, especially when it's requested by strange men who look strange. And so she's like disrobed in front of all these people, and he spits on her stomach a few times, and then rubs that saliva everywhere. And then he says, "Go back, you're fine." Comes back to Iran, does some tests, no sign of cancer. So for those of you who want to know if you have any magic inside you, start spitting on people.
All right, can we try it?
So your next question may be, well, are there ways of living, or are there ways of being? Are there particular exercises that can get you to that particular stage in life? Possibly. But India is a funny place too, I mean, remote areas in any society, they have some relatively strange folks doing strange things. Yeah. Spike, how are you? Oh, okay. Are you good? Okay. So anything else you guys want to talk about, or should we just... Yeah.
Is it more productive to live life believing that there's something after death, or to believe that there's nothing after death?
I think it's nice to have hope. If I was to believe that once I die, my wife is going to get remarried, I'd probably go home and just end her life today. But the thought that she will continue to remember me forever and ever, and ever, like one of the Disney shows, keeps my faith alive. And I say, okay, well, it's a relationship worth having. When you look at the book of Job very, very closely, it's one of the perhaps oldest books in the Old Testament. There is no mention of a soul. There is no mention of an afterlife. Because anyone who's read the book very closely, and anyone who knows to some extent how kind of books are written and how they evolve and how they're impacted by history. You have this book written at a time where the Hebrews or the Jews have not yet been touched by the Zoroastrian tradition. So for them, what you have is Sheol. You know, once you die, you just go into Hades and you just disappear. That's it. It's finished. There is no judgment. There is no soul. There is no damnation. There is no heaven. There is no hell. So when bad things happen to Job, he doesn't really ask, what's going to happen to my soul? Am I going to be damned forever? None of those things. How am I going to find salvation in afterlife? Once, however, they are touched by the philosophy of Zoroastrianism, all of a sudden, for the first time in Jewish history, what you have is the idea of having a soul that's eternal, having a God that's going to kind of look at you and judge you for your deeds. And you can find the same kind of story in early Egyptian life and philosophy, that Egypt falls into three kingdoms. You know, the old kingdom, you have Egypt in the middle of a desert. You know, wheels have not yet been invented, so it's very difficult to get to Egypt because it's just sand. You know, and by the time you get to Egypt, you're dead. Once they're able to kind of tame the horses, make the wheel, moving across the desert will be much easier, and that's what happened. So Egypt, before being invaded, they had no belief really in afterlife, no soul. You die, and that's it. But once they become invaded, and they are forced to kind of think back and say, why is this happening to us? What's the reason for this? And all of a sudden you have, I forgot the forms. And all of a sudden they ask, why is this happening to us? What's justice? You know, all that stuff. And all of a sudden you have the presence of all these gods. And you have the presence of a soul. You have the presence of this philosophy that judges you, judges your heart once you die. So, it's kind of like love. For the longest time in our history, it was a taboo. You don't go out there fall in love. You just get, you know, your arranged marriage, and 20 years from now, once you're married and have a few kids, you'll just like your wife. Maybe you'll love your wife, you know. And just in case you went home and, you know, told your father you're in love by Joe Schmo, so what the hell is love? If you've seen the movie Fiddler on the Roof, you guys have seen the movie? You know, so the daughter comes to him and says, I'm in love. He says, what the hell is love? I don't know what love is. And she tries to explain love to her father, but that doesn't work. So the poor guy goes to his wife and says, so, you know, Julie, do you love me? What do you mean? Do you love me? Well, I wash your underwear, I wash your clothes, I clean the house, I make food. If that's not love, I don't know what is. He says, yeah, I understand those things, but do you love me? And I suppose the point is, if you have a certain word that does not exist, I mean, consider ADHD. It didn't exist, you know, 10 years ago. Bathrooms, all gender. What the hell is that? You know, these are mostly recent phenomenon. You know, I was shipped to India at the age of 11. In my culture, parents don't abandon you. We don't even have a word related to parents as abandonment. At least it didn't exist for me in my family. And so when they shipped us to India, no one ever looked at me and said, well, maybe your parents didn't love you. Maybe they abandoned you. Maybe you're this. Maybe none of those existed. Now, on the other hand, if I was to ship my own kids to some forsaken place, you know, the first thing that's going to reach their ears, well, you know, your parents didn't love you, you're really not wanted. And from that point on, they will probably need therapy for the rest of their life. And the point is, words have a tremendous amount of power. They impose themselves on the human psyche, especially their meaning. And should a culture create a definition that kind of poisons your interior, you're done for life. It's finished. So, you know, if you live in a culture that doesn't believe in souls, well, that's fine. I've probably shared this with you guys, that some of the Eskimos, they're nomadic people. They have to move every few months because it's freezing temperature, food runs out, and the mothers usually nurse their kids for the first 6 or 7 years. 7 years. I mean, usually mothers are done at year and a half, 2 years. Let's just be generous, 3 years, but 7 years? Are you kidding? So when you have to move and you have 3 kids, 2, 3, 4, and 5, well, you only have so much milk to give, and the road is tough. And so they have a tendency of leaving a kid out in the snow to die. No guilt, no shame, no soul to be damned by the gods. That's just their culture. But what you can do as an American, as Westerners have done for the longest time, is you go to these countries and you make them feel bad for who and what they are. And you say, oh, Jesus Christ, well, you need to believe in him. He needs to be your savior. And once they buy that philosophy, their own culture disappears. And now they're guilt-ridden. That's how you do things. I mean, it's no different than this class. You come to this class like stupid. You don't know how to think. You don't know how to talk. And every time your hand goes up and you ask a question, I make fun of you. You're embarrassed. So, and you don't like the embarrassment. So you go to the library and you begin to read and you begin to formulate your questions. And then you come to class, raise your hand, and you ask a very, very eloquent question, nicely worded. And that's because of this class. All of us are here to make someone feel guilty. And you just better hope that the guilt is going to be constructive and educative. Otherwise you're just ruined. So it's always good to have parents, shadowing you wherever you go. Those helicopter parents always smacking you. Not always, but often. Spike, anything? Are you sure? Okay. Anyone else before we go home? Hello.
Why is history taught by people who have one in the sense that they don't tell the full story or listener?
So, let's say in Texas, there is this brand new narrative that's taking place. I don't know if it's going to take root, but the narrative is that slavery really was some workforce, that we were trying to give some group of people opportunities. It wasn't about holding them hostage. It wasn't about exploiting them, manipulating them. Have you ever been in a relationship? One of these days, when you get yourself in a relationship, you'll discover something really amazing. Let's say your companion has told you a few times to take out the trash, but for some strange reason, you just have failed to do so. So he or she comes home and looks at you and says, God damn it, I've told you 5 times to take out the trash. Well, she's embarrassed you, she's belittled you, she's made fun of you, she's told you that you're stupid, she has to tell you things like 50 times for things to sink in. And so you come up with this very, very creative narrative. I wasn't able to take out the trash because of A, B, C, D. I was doing the financial aid form for the kids. I was mowing the lawn. And all of a sudden what you're trying to do is you're trying to make her feel guilty for accusing you of being forgetful. And what you're trying to say is, actually, I'm not forgetful. I was going to take out the trash, but I had to do all these other things. So it's always difficult to look at someone with a Israel. What can you say to them? Somehow, for the past 75 years, they've been trying to justify kicking out almost 1 million people out of their homes. Why'd they do that? So, that's just life, man. It's shitty. Anyone else? Dagan?
I always see stuff online. Having this mindset of being accepting of everything that sort of like, something bad happens, you so it has to happen for everyone. How do you like? Is it possible to have that mindset? And so how do you accept it? So, what life is?
After class, you're going to get in your car and drive home. But you expect yourself to be home in 10 minutes' time. You've made some plans for your life. And in those 10 minutes, getting yourself from point A to point B, you don't foresee any real disturbances. So you're calm, you're collected, you're sitting in the car listening to Snoop Dogg, you know. And all of a sudden, someone just rams into you. You're not just going to accept, say, oh, okay, well, that was beautiful. I'm going to be like in the middle of a highway for the next 5 hours. No, your instinctual and very normal reaction is you're upset, and rightly so. I mean, you have things to do, and this stupid guy, he's probably high or drunk or maybe just texting or just not paying attention, rams into you for no apparent reason. That's just unjust, unfair. You haven't done anything, so you're going to be angry. So say, okay, let me just take care of this quickly. You get out and you want to exchange, license and insurance and all that, only to realize he does not have insurance. What now? And just in case you report that to your own insurance company, well, your rates are going to go up, 10, 15, 20%. You're paying $600, all of a sudden it jumps to about $2,000. That pisses you off some more. Time needs to pass, and I don't know how much time, maybe 2 days, maybe 2 weeks, maybe 20 years, until you have enough power in your life, and power comes in a variety of different ways. Maybe you have financial power, maybe someone in your family will die and will leave you a couple $1 million, and you say, well, 2,000 is nothing, okay? Maybe once the emotional dust settles, you look at the scenario and say, okay, it doesn't mean anything. I remember about 5 or 6 years ago, I was coming to campus around 4 a.m, and this idiot, and there was no one on the road, but some idiot just ran the red light and just hit me, back bumper. It wasn't serious, but the car rolled around a few times, and I said to myself, okay, my job was to go to campus and write. It's 4 a.m. Do I really want to stay here till 7 a.m, exchanging numbers and waiting for the cops to come? I said, fuck it. My car was damaged, but I didn't really care. So I just drove to school. It's finished. Did once in a while look at my bumper and say, man, I should have just stopped, exchange information, got some money, spend that money on going on a cruise or something, Yeah, I had those thoughts once in a while, but for the most part, I just didn't care. And I didn't care because, I don't know, I just didn't care. And I don't know how you get to a non-caring place. It's one thing to sit and read Marcus Aurelius' book on Stoicism, meditations. It's got nice bumper stickers. But by the time you're able to actually apply those ideas, you just don't know when it's going to happen. So just in case you've been meditating, like those idiots around the lake with their mats walking around, right? You go to a yoga shop, whether it's Bikram yoga, monkey yoga, shit yoga, it doesn't really matter. They sit, they breathe in, breathe out. And you ask them, hi, how are you doing? And they have this very calm voice to them. Oh, I'm doing well. How are you? You know. And then, of course, something disturbs them. And all of a sudden they go nuts. You know, the Karens you see on YouTube once in a while. All of us have those thin facades to us. But when real things happen, we actually go crazy. You know, if your question is, at what stage in your own intellectual, emotional maturity do you come to a place where bad things happen and you say, God gives and God taketh away? I don't know. One of the best examples of acceptance can be found in the book of Job. I mean, Job is a good man. You know, he does everything just the right way. It's like you write your essay, you do all sorts of things the right way, and your final grade is a C or a D or an F. And you're wondering why, you know. And it takes him about 50 pages with a good amount of tears and screaming and demanding God for some justice. He wants to understand. And even in the end of the book, you know, Job doesn't really understand. All he knows is that God is this humongous thing. And the best he can do is just say, okay, you know, I'm sorry for saying all those nasty things to you. I accept life just the way it is. You're young, man. You're supposed to fight. It's a good thing. And you'll come to a place where you realize you're no match for some of the huge events that life throws at you. But for now, you're supposed to fight. It's good to fight. I had this girlfriend when I was 2 in Iran. And after many years of being with her, she says to me, I don't want to be with you anymore. I said, okay. And she said, we're just joking. Why don't you ever fight for the relationship? I don't really care for it. I mean, I like to have you around, like the tables and chairs, but you want to leave, leave. How you get to that place, I don't really know. You never seen Mike Tyson in the ring with someone? You should. You should check it out. It's really fun. First, because you're a man and you ought to love violence. Second, what happens is you find yourself in the ring, you know, with Mike Tyson. He kind of knocks you down and you get up. You're a man, right? So you fight. You get up with all of your might. Then he knocks you down again. Then you get up again. He knocks you down again. And you say, you know what? I'm just going to stay down. Then you accept defeat, like a very mature adult. I mean, just go watch some of the clips. And when his opponents start to get up and fight him, I have no doubt, Deegan, you say to yourself, stay down, man. What are you, an idiot? Stay down. You're no match for him. You'll get there. But we fight. We fight because we like comfort, we like laziness, we don't like struggle, effort. Anyone else?
Why did you give up?
You know, I feel bad for you guys. Ten years ago, I would invite people to the office. I would put some sweat into making them like philosophy, or making them like my classes, or maybe even like me. Time passes, you begin to examine the difficulties of any relationship, whether it's teacher-student, giving, receiving, teaching, learning. And once you realize how difficult it really is, and then you also have some access to history, you know, that people much better than you in the past have tried and they failed. I mean, go back to 50 years ago. Malcolm X, Martin Luther, Mahatma Gandhi, Spider-Man, you know, all these superheroes have tried to do something for humanity and they've all failed. And they're really, really insightful and they have a good amount of experience inside them. And yet they fail. And so when you kind of put everything together and realize how difficult it really is, After a while, you say, you know what? I'm just going to go to class, crack some jokes. If there is some seriousness to be had, we'll be serious for a few minutes, and then we'll go home. And just in case someone emails and says, I have some questions, can I come to the office and talk about this and that? There's a good chance I'm going to say no. I just don't care. Have I given up? Yeah, I've given up because first, I don't have the energy. Second, I've come to value my time much more now because of the lack of energy and my age. Third, the human beings are like when they're born, they're this plot of land and it's clean and it has great soil. It has all the right stuff for things to grow. But because of our parents, and they're in no fault really, because of society, because of our culture, because of advertisement, media, all sorts of things, it's our own pathetic little flaws. This plot of land that can blossom rose bushes, and it can actually smell really, really good. What grows out of this plot of land is just weeds. And once in a while you try to plant a rose bush only to realize that the weeds grow really, really fast and they don't really need protection. They don't need too much water. They just grow out of nowhere. You have no idea why they're there. And initially it's very easy to uproot them, but first you have to care for the plot of land. And there is tiny, tiny little thing. You just go down there and you just pluck them out and that's it, it's finished. But when you leave them untended and not cared for, they just grow into the gigantic trees, and then you have to call someone with a saw, with an axe, with all sorts of things to come and uproot this. And then when someone says, I'm really interested in, or I want to change, you say, well, shit, you're like 30, you're 20. And upon a closer examination, you realize they have all these weeds inside them. Wrong thinking, experiences that have created all sorts of emotions, and they're difficult. They've taken roots. And you say, okay, well, I suppose I can get rid of some of them and maybe go to Home Depot and, rent a tiller and till the ground and then buy some soil and then create this irrigation and then plant this rose bush and then put some tarp down so weeds don't grow. And then every week go downstairs and figure out, how to best protect the plant out of put in the ground. Who's got time for all that? I certainly don't. So when you kind of notice all of that, you say, well, maybe it's not worth it. One of the best movies that talks about this, I think it's Rambo, not the last one where he went to some Mexican cartel and demolished them, but the one previous that took place supposedly in Burma. One of the nice things about John Rambo is that he's seen the world. He's seen how corrupt politics is. He's seen how vicious people are. He used to fight for justice. He was in the military, fighting for some ridiculous noble cause. And when he comes to realize that everything is just absurd, and wars are created by some people behind closed doors, and poor people's kids go out there and sacrifice their lives for nothing, really. And so he finds himself in Burma. He catches cobras, he sells them, and that's how he makes his living. And he lives in this tiny boat, okay? And some people come from America, and they say, we are here to help people. And the first thing he asks, well, do you guys have guns? Guns? No, we don't have guns. What we have is Bibles. And he looks at them and says, fuck off. I don't want to see you guys. You can't help people with Bibles. This is like real life, man. People are sick. People are dying. People are being brutalized by this awful military guy. And you guys have Bibles? What? Turn the other cheek until what? Every last one of you is dead? And so coming to realize that they're being rebuffed, they leave and Rambo goes to his boat and this woman goes to him, part of this missionary work. And she happens to be very attractive, and that's the bait. There has to be something about it that's attractive. Otherwise, it's not going to work, okay? So she's very attractive and she has a lovely voice. She goes to John Rambo and says, "Help us." And he says, "No." And she takes off her clothes. "Help us." And he says, "Well, maybe." Well, she doesn't really, but she says some things. And he begins to doubt his position. He says, "Okay, well, maybe." And she says, "You used to be young, you fought for this and fought for that. You're doing the same thing." So whether she's a woman, whether she's an attractive young woman, I'm not really quite sure what it is, but he says, "Okay." So there has to be something that Rambo finds beneficial, useful, attractive. Okay. So because of her, she carries like 20 people on the boat. And then he gets his hand dirty. There has to be something that can get you out of your sense of it's no longer worth it. You may say, for example, "My life is not worth living." And then you're diagnosed with cancer stage 4. And all of a sudden you realize, man, even breathing is beautiful. Even seeing the companion you've disliked for all these years is nice. Even having food is nice. Because chemo, radiation, everything tastes like metal, and for the first time you can taste something. So, and there is also this evolution that takes place, this maturing stage that takes place, that initially you look at someone and you like them for their physicality. There's nothing wrong with that. Then you enter a different stage of your own maturity where you say, "I don't really care how tall they are. I don't really care how much money they got. I want to see if they're mature, if they're emotionally mature, if they can think well, And then you realize you're going out with Hunchback of Notre Dame. I mean, very, very unattractive fellow, but he thinks really well and he feels life really well. And then he can express his thinkings and feelings that inspire you. Then you get to a different place in life where you say, I don't really care about any of that stuff. I won't have a baby. Does he have money? Does he drink? Does he smoke? And what you realize is that every time you go from one stage to another, all the pleasures of the previous stage, they're no longer interesting for you. They lose value and meaning. You've given up on them. And that's a good giving up, because you see something. You also care for your future. There are some of you in this class who are like over the age of like 50, 40. Some of you in this class, you should have been you should have been done with school like decades ago. But you didn't give up on some of the pleasures, some of the pursuits, some of the perspectives about how life is or should be for you. And you come to a certain place where you say, you know what, it's not working out for me. I don't like those friends. I don't like smoking anymore. I don't like those partying days anymore. And you give up on them. And once you give up, you find yourself taking like 15, 16 units. That's wonderful. So sometimes giving up is good. There was a German poet, Margaret Bigel, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And she just says some nice things. Anyone else? I don't have any cough drops today. It's not your fault. It's not my fault. It's Dagan's fault. And he must accept. You have a cough drop? You have a bag of them? Can I have the whole thing? What happened to generosity? I want all of it. Maybe I should tell you a story then. Anyone else with anything? Before we, I'm sorry, I don't have a cough drop. No one? Aaron?
Why do we think about life so much?
Because your life sucks. I mean, why do I think about health so much? Because I have chest ache all the time. Why do people go to the doctor and ask for Viagra? Whenever you suffer any losses, you always go back to the time you had them, but we're not trained, and none of us are really, to appreciate what you have. So in loss, there is a good amount of grieving process going on, and then reflection all of a sudden appears, and you say, man, is there a way I can go back or find a place where I can bring back the things I've lost? So you begin to think about it. You have lost many things in life, but you don't really much care for them, so you don't think about them. But there are some things that you have lost, whether it's time, whether it's youth, whether it's a parent, it doesn't really matter what it is. But if you care for anything that you no longer have, but you want it, then you begin to think about it. And it's not just thinking. I mean, there's a feeling of you miss having those things. It's filled with emotions. And depending how intense they are, how layered they are, how in depth they are, then your reflection comes in like a political animal, says, okay, where do I need to go to find them? And it's good. Just in case you're wondering what the hell happened to time and all of a sudden you became 29, almost 30. And you say, maybe I should just do school a bit more seriously. And next semester comes by and you say, I'm going to take 23 units. Sure, you can go around telling people you're taking 23 units, but really the intention behind you taking 23 units is because you have grieved the loss of time. To some extent, you're angry because you wasted so much time. And it's great. So whatever you have lost and you want back because you find their presence meaningful, you have no choice but to think about it all the time. Pain is good if you know how to use it. Pain is really, really, really good. Anyways, Olivia?
Should you want to be understood?
Should you want to be understood? No. Let's say for a moment Matthew emails me saying, Amir, I want to come to your office and I want to talk about something that has been on my mind. Now, he assumes that I'm interested. What's on his mind? What is he going to do? He's going to come to my office, waste my time with some ridiculous assumptions about this and that. And his ego is very much in play. He wants to sound profound. Even if it's only a set of questions, he wants to make sure he asks them the right way. What he should do, he should just come to my office and just sit quietly. And then try to understand my office. All the tapestry I have, all the pictures I have, all the writings I have. That's what he should do. I don't want to go into a 23-year-old's world. The hell does he have in his world? Nothing. It's just shit. My world, on the other hand, I'm from Iran. I'm just kidding. But all I'm saying is it depends really who you're hanging out with. If you're seeing a therapist, then yeah, it's his or her job to understand you. So, he can drag out the best parts out of you so you can kind of get better a little bit. Yeah. A lot of it really depends on who you're asking the question from. If it's your companion, if it's a boyfriend who never listens to you, then yeah, you gotta spank him a few times so he's forced to understand where the hell you're coming from. If I was to take your question as a personal insult, I would say, no, I don't really care to understand anyone. A 50-year-old man has been to places you want to go. Okay, so you want to talk to him about, your boyfriend left you. Okay, fine. He's gone through 10 marriages. What else do you have? Well, I want to buy a car. Well, he's got like 5 cars. What else do you have? And you realize you have nothing really that has depth. If you were to ask him, well, what's worth pursuing? Then he's going to demand that you begin to listen to him in hopes of understanding his experiences. And if you're able to understand the experience of a 50-year-old person like your mom, your dad, then that's a shortcut for your own life. You know, it's you can take lots of GE classes until you're blue in the face. And that's America. You know, you run into a 40-year-old student, what are you doing? I'm taking GEs. You're almost fucking dead. Figure out what the hell you want to do. No, I want to explore. Okay, well, fine. You know. The other approach is, well, you know, if we were to talk about this class, for example, but let me mess you up. Let me contaminate you with ideas. And let's just say you're only like 18 or 19 or 20. And if you become really interested in these ideas, in a couple of years, you'll find yourself at a 4-year school. You'll have your bachelor's in philosophy. How old are you? 22. You'll have your master's by the time you're 25. You'll have your PhD by the time you're 30. You have another 60 good years to live. And you enter into life at the age of 30 with this tremendous amount of power. It's a wonderful life. I didn't allow you to do GEs. I manipulated you, coerced you, contaminated you, corrupted you, used you, brainwashed you, whatever you want to call it. But it's a shortcut. But it also depends on who's giving you the shortcut. Puff Daddy? Or Terry? You know, or Socrates? Isn't it Puff Daddy?
No Didi.
Who?
No Didi.
No Didi? No Didi. Didi in Persian means to see, or did you see? So no Didi means, did you see? And the answer is no, I didn't see. Yeah.
Through time, what correlation do you find with giving up on people and giving up on yourself?
Well, giving up on yourself is different than giving up on people. If I've had a broken past and I've been through 25 different relationships, and all of a sudden I look at you and find you attractive, and you look at me and you find me attractive, and you come to me and say, Amir, let's go have a cup of coffee. I'm going to internalize the experience. I'm going to say, you know what? I've been here before. It's just not going to work out. I'm not going to invest emotions. I'm just not going to do it. I'd rather just like walk my dog. I've given up. And I've given up for the right reasons. I've tried, I've failed, and I'm not willing to do another experiment. Giving up on people is different. It's like, I'm relatively healthy. You're messed up in all sorts of ways. I've tried. It hasn't worked. I walk away. Yeah.
But in your position, for example, the voice that you have impacts students.
I'm sorry?
The voice that you have impacts the life of students.
Yes.
What made you give up on your students? Not give up, but what made you lessen on?
You just get old. You know, every sport, and I think if you were to look at life, and life has all these different branches, look at them as sports, okay? And every sport has, I suppose, a certain age limit, you know. And you should look at someone's intellect very much like their physical body. There is an intellectual body and an emotional body. And this is something that you yourself have experienced. That let's say you have an exam tomorrow, and it's a math exam, and it requires a great amount of intellectual energy. And there's also the stress that's involved. What if I fail? I need to get an A. So you put this added pressure on you. And so you go to some coffee shop and you sit for 2 hours, and you're very, very focused. At a certain point, you say, man, I'm just so exhausted. And then you retire for maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours, maybe 10 minutes. Maybe you say, I'm just going to drop the class. It's too much for me. Okay? So So when you do something over and over and over and over again, a couple of things happen. First, I can no longer receive new information. I'm no longer interested in new information. I no longer read books. I just write. So a good amount of knowledge that's out there is no longer available to me because I'm no longer interested. Okay. Second, I've been in this business since 1980, let's just say 1990. How many years is that? It's a sport. Okay. Now, how old are you? 20. Let's say you came to my office and you said to me, Amir, I want to do philosophy. Do I know your past? Do I know how fucked up you are? The answer is no. Do I need to know? The answer is yes. How do I get to know you? I have to spend time with you. You have to come to my house. I have to see your body language. You have to see the way you are with my wife, with my kids, how you handle yourself around dinner time. That takes time. And the time I give you is the time I have to take away from my family and from my own rest. Now, I have to be enormously interested in you. And how do I become interested? You come to class all the time, you ask questions all the time, you write essays all the time, you keep in touch every fucking day. It can be seasonal, man. You know? And then when I see all those things, I say, well, okay, well, maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea to have him over the house. And then we'll sit and talk. And then I have to figure out, well, how are your parents? Do you have money? How's your health? Because every time I invest something in you, there is going to be a weed growing next to that investment. If that weed is not pulled out either by me or you, it's going to demolish whatever investment I've injected in you. I mean, when you tell me that you have to leave class early to take some math exam, I say, well, this guy doesn't give a shit. If that happens every other day, well, I'm not going to be interested. Even if your hand goes up and say, I have questions, I don't care. I'm no longer at that place where I can just invest myself foolishly in things. I haven't given up because I'm depressed. I've given up because I have a good amount of experience under my belt. And the better you become at your craft, it can be anything, the more you demand. You know, I remember when we called around, and I think I've shared this with you, we called around to see if we can find a piano teacher for my daughter. And everybody recommended this Persian piano teacher. And I went and saw her. He said, well, listen, what do you think? You know what? The first thing, she was 50. The first thing she asked is, how old is she? Well, she's like 5. Do you think she has talent? The truth is, I don't know. At my age, having been in this business for about 35 years, I can no longer do 5-year-olds. I only do students who have been practicing piano for at least 15 years. And this is a woman with a good amount of awareness where she is in life. She doesn't care about like getting paid $200 an hour. She doesn't care that I'm Persian. She doesn't care I'm begging her. She says, listen, I have this much energy and I'm only going to invest it on students who I think have a future in this field. That's a good piece of information to have. I mean, imagine most of your life you've been going out with broken people because of your own issues. Okay, you've overcome those issues for the first time. Now you want to look for someone who's healthy. Have you given up on working or being with broken people? Absolutely. Is it good for you? Yeah. It's Terry's fault. Getting upset right now. Rosalind, anything? Wolf? Spike? Dagan? Richard? Aaron? Cassera? How's la boulangerie? Abi? Amaya? Janai? Can you tell me when it's like time to go, please?
13 minutes.
We still have 15 minutes.
We're just asking for the time.
In the videos you were talking about, there's a right way to be in perspective.
Right. What is that?
What is the right way to be?
You have children? Do they do stupid things? Good job. That's what kids do. They're just stupid. So, when you catch them doing or having done something stupid, what do you do? No. First you get angry.
Yes.
There you go. And you keep that anger inside you. You calm down. And then you say, Julia, come here. Right? And then you sit Julia down and first you slap her. Right? Kick her? Punch her?
Not anymore.
Good job. So you sit her down and you try to talk to her. Honey, A, B, C, D. Honey, E, F, G, H. What are you doing? You're trying to have her see things through your eyes. But she's 12 and you're 40. You come from a different planet. Your task is just sit back, watch your kids make mistake, and have an open door policy that just in case they fall, you're there to pick them up. And sometimes you spank them, scream at them, and that's just the way things are. The only thing you can really, really pray for or hope for is that you will live long enough to hear someone knocking on your door and it's your daughter. And she's like 30. And then she'll say to you, Mom, you were right all along. Because most kids don't really have that particular luck. Oftentimes the relationship with their parents have gone so bad. Sometimes, the kid just gets lost, period. I mean, the prodigal son story, one of the nice things about the story is that first, the kid really comes to a place where he understands. And he's really sad because of what he understands. And then he also remembers his way back home. He also has a father who doesn't ask him any questions, just understands that this kid had to make mistakes. This kid had to understand his mistakes, go through the grieving process, and be humble enough to say, you know what, I'm just going to run home. And that in itself is a reward in itself. And he just runs to the kid, embraces him. I mean, if you look at the story, if you just break it open, there are so many different layers that every person who has committed any wrong towards themselves or another, they have to go through until they're embraced, until they're accepted, So when you ask, for example, go back to what we said. Jesus tried to have people look at life the way he was looking at life. Nobody was buying it. Malcolm tried, Gandhi tried, Martin tried, Socrates tried, and ultimately people like Plato and Aristotle tried. And the way they tried is that they said, you know what? Screw the public. I'm going to have just private space. I'm going to interview people. I'm only going to choose those who I think have potential to see the world the way I see the world. And it's something that all of us in this class do when it comes to dating at a different, a later stage in our life. That, you kind of get broken by people who are cheap and stupid and ridiculous and immature. And then when you go out, you want to see if this person sitting across the table from you is seeing the world the same way that you do. Do they look at money the same way? Do they look at children the same way? Do they look at parents the same way? Do they look at history the same way? And if, you guys match like 60, 65, even 50%, that's a good buy. You know, you don't want to go out with someone or hang out with people who just have a different perspective on life. It's too much work. You know, sometimes I sit and watch these clips about these young Jewish Zionists, you know, trying to convince, you know, people who go on Piers Morgan, and he has this tendency of always harping on, you know, Palestinians and Middle Easterners, and, you know, and it doesn't matter who the guest is, all these guests are trying to convince Piers Morgan that he is wrong. And it's such a waste of time. You want Piers Morgan to have a shift in perspective, you know, ship his ass to Palestine. Send him there. Let him live there. Not in Israel, but Palestine. And just in case he says, no, I don't want to go, force him to go. Very much the way Palestinians were forced to go. See how that makes him feel. If you really want to educate people, it's only through force. It's only through pain. That's the only way. But it has to be protected pain. You can't just like demolish people and just walk away. It doesn't work that way. Make Terry feel bad, then say, come to the office. And then you make him a cup of coffee. And then he leaves saying, what the fuck was that? First he tells me I'm a piece of shit. Then he invites me to his office and gives me like beautiful food. That makes no sense. That's how it's done. Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. So, anyone else? Yes, Matthew. What can you say? Nothing, really. Megan. Terry. You always like have a question in like the last 10 seconds of the class.
You think that Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, people, those kind of figures over time spoke a certain message at that time of change and your rights of people. You think that we have a figure like a Martin Luther King today? You think that the figure like that today would that change the world, culture of life?
So if you were to look at the African American culture up to the 1960s, it suffered a great amount of oppression. Oppression creates a good amount of pain, not just individual pain, collective pain. One of the things that usually happen in, say, if there is an earthquake, for example, it's not just there, it's everywhere. So what happens is you get off of your seat and help the person over there. Okay, so there is collective oppression and then there is individual oppression. When it's just you in pain, you'll find some way to help yourself out. If on the other hand you have like tens of thousands of people in pain, suffering in the same, relatively same shape or form, all of a sudden from that springs forth a flower, a Messiah. Okay, and then that Messiah has a message that speaks to the masses. If the masses are not in pain, well, you don't have a public message. You just have a message like a therapist. He only or she only speaks to one single person. If you look at, there is a thing in the world of religion we call axial age. And axial age is interesting because you have Socrates, you have Plato, we have Zoroaster, we have Lao Tzu, we have a few years later, we have Moses and Jesus, all within like a few decades. Sometimes decades, sometimes centuries. And if you look at that historical period, you realize there is this oppression that everybody is suffering from. And out of this, there is this revolution. And in this revolution, one or two or three people spring forth. And they have this collective message for people. Okay. What you have right now is, let's say for Persians, You have one Persian lives in poverty, you have another Persian lives in another kind of poverty, you have another group of people who live in a great amount of privilege. And what you have is 80% privilege, 10% poverty here and 10% poverty there. There is not going to be a revolution because 80% live in privilege. You need, the way that revolution happened in all sorts of countries is that you need to have at least 80% of the public just not feeling good about their life. And they need a spark. That spark can be Martin, can be Malcolm, can be Mahatma, it doesn't really matter. But that spark happens when a good amount of people live in oppression. You know. And it's like anything else, you're not going to look for a doctor if there is no pain. You know, if you and your wife come to realize that the neighborhood in which you live is poisoning the psyches of your children, there's a revolution. You become an immigrant, a migrant. You pack up your stuff and you move to Montclair. That's what happens. You know. I mean, the time in which Angela Davis was born and doing work, the Black Panther movement, for example, you can't do that today. It's not possible. I mean, it's not that the messages are not exciting or inspiring, or it doesn't create reflection. It does, but there is no movement behind it anymore. People are far too comfortable.
What do you think that is?
You know, it's whenever you're healthy, you don't think about your health. You have money, you have options, you know. I mean, segregation is a painful thing. You know, it makes you think. But the moment you say, well, anyone can drink from any fountain, all of a sudden, well, that pain goes away. When that pain goes away, thinking goes away, reflecting goes away. The notion of justice, why, everything goes away. And so when those questions go away, a good amount of philosophy that was created out of segregation, well, that goes away too. And as pain diminishes, questions go away. I went to Market Hall a couple of days ago and bought myself almond croissants. I can't eat almond croissant, I just bought it just to look at it. You know, like how some people go to church and worship the cross. I unwrapped the almond croissant, just looked at it for hours. Smelled it, licked it. And then my wife calls and says, Amir, read this book. So I downloaded an Audible. It's about heart disease. It ruined everything for me. Can't even breathe. It's bad for me. Well, my point was, in forgetfulness, I was very close to eating that croissant that had like 5 sticks of butter in it. But the moment she reminds me that I'm actually quite close to death, so, well, maybe I shouldn't eat it. So, people, I have to go to Roseville. Some people are going to go to my office. Any of you who have nothing to do and want to occupy a space where you can make tea, coffee, pee on the floor. My office, I'm just kidding, don't pee, is available. So, I'm on the 4th floor, room 402. I'm just gonna go change and leave. I'll leave the door open. Okay? It's good to see all of you. Have a nice weekend. Stay in touch. God bless you, your soulless souls.
You're gonna mess up his office now.